Hi everyone, we're really excited to be, we're going to be talking hair restoration, and we're waiting for our guest speakers to come on from the US. We've got Lauren and James Bartholomeusz is going to be joining us. So we're just waiting for them to join us, where we'll be talking KeraLase and KeraFactor. Train me because I know you've got a long history with Lutronic, because you invented some of the great technology, and you could blow our minds, I guess, talking about sub-microsecond pulsing. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're talking about something which is really exciting. We're talking about KeraFactor.
Yeah.
So perhaps, James, why don't you start off by just telling a little bit about your background and your, I guess, journey to discover what got you on the quest to look at hair restoration?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely happy to give you the 2-minute elevator pitch. So as you mentioned, I've been in medical devices, lasers, energy-based devices for 25 years. I was basically born into it. Lucky enough to have a plastic surgeon father in Australia. So that got me involved in technology very, very early. Definitely not part, well, this 50-50 is part of this conversation. The question is, how did I end up developing and designing KeraFactor, and then the KeraLase procedure, which is something that's offered by both Lutronic and KeraFactor. So worked for Candela, built Cineron and Candela, built a bunch of different machines, I think probably 20 machines over the last 25 years. And of course, the devices that you mentioned at Lutronic. Lutronic approached me about 2019, and I had already got out of the laser business because I'd started losing my hair. And around about 2014, I started to put the pieces together to develop a serum that could be delivered transepidermally. And so my logic behind all of this at the time was there wasn't anything that was very specific. There wasn't, again, I have a laser brain, so I think laser, you think specificity. So I look at all of these lotions and potions and stuff that exists around the world for hair, and everybody's got this hair tonic and this and that. And we have this, and we use plant extracts, and we do this. Nothing very scientific, or nothing that we would even accept in the laser world. And so I took a laser person's approach to a hair growth serum that's really focused around scientifically validated biomimetic growth factors that, when combined together, have a synergistic effect, and that are delivered transepidermally, which is we'll probably get to this later, but this is where using a laser to help the penetration of the serum is kind of the match made in heaven.
So I guess before I ask you because we've had a lot of questions come in, before we ask them, is it perhaps you could explain simple terms? Obviously, a lot of our people will be familiar with the Laser MD Ultra, but perhaps you could explain how that joint procedure works.
Yes. So when I started before being approached by Lutronic about my serum, which is the KeraFactor, we had looked at different mechanisms for getting it into the scalp. So the serum by itself, when you make a topical serum, you want to make it topically bioavailable, right? So that's the same with any skincare, as you guys know, you have skincare too in your line. You want to make it as available as possible, and you want as much penetration as possible. But the hair follicle is a little bit different because there's no real selective way to get the serum to the hair follicle unless you actually inject it into every single follicle, and you can imagine that take you a very long time. And so what we discovered was that the Laser MD, or the 1927 nanometer wavelength from the Laser MD Ultra, or even the regular Laser MD, creates a little microchannel, like micropores in the epidermis, which happens to be perfect for topical serum delivery. You do that when you do your melasma treatments with the tranexamic acid, or when you want to combine it with retinol. So it's just the logical next progression was, well, what if we took that same enhanced serum penetration capability of the 1927 nanometer wavelength and added a very potent, selective, highly concentrated, nanoliposome wrapped serum specifically designed around improving scalp and hair health so you get thicker, darker, fuller hair.
So, brilliant. So I guess we're using the Ultra to infuse the product you've come up with. So I guess the first question that came in, how long does KeraFactor MD take to work?
That's the multi-million dollar question, because it's how long does it take any treatment to work? Hair is a little bit more difficult because KeraFactor, KeraLase can be working, and it's working all the time, but a patient won't notice it's working until the hair comes out of the scalp. So you can imagine your follicle sits inside your scalp, and then the hair kind of pokes itself out. And based on time, which is just like the time that your follicle and your hair is growing, at a certain point in time, those thicker, denser, more high quality, healthier hairs will be at a length of which a patient will notice that they're seeing this high density, really healthy hair. So that's a long way of saying that it generally takes somewhere between 2 to 3 months to start to appreciate the newer quality, the higher density of hair, the thicker hair that's growing out of the scalp, purely just because it takes time for your hair to grow.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Well, and I guess the next question was then it follows on that. So, what can patients expect from a KeraLase treatment?
So let's break that into different parts to make it clear for everybody. So I think there's what should they expect immediately at the treatment, what's it going to feel like,
Immediately and long
yeah,
term.
and then
Yeah.
what's it going to look like a little later. So of course you do the treatment, you take the KeraLase and the Ultra, you make these little micro pore perforations into the scalp, into the epidermis, very important that, and you put the KeraFactor serum on, and KeraFactor MD goes on, and then you put a laser cap, or you can use a red light to activate some of the components of that KeraFactor MD serum. So that whole process doesn't take very long. It's going to feel a little bit like a tingly sensation. So patients will expect a tingly sensation. It might feel a little warm, like a bit of like sunburn, but there should be no pain during the treatment because we're not going through the epidermis. We do not want to be going through the epidermis. It's a very light treatment of the epidermis. And then some people like to refrigerate the KeraFactor MD serum, so they put this cool serum on, give a bit of a scalp massage, and you're all done.
And sorry, James.
Now,
Sorry, James. There's no need then to use any anesthesia.
no anesthesia at all. Actually, it's absolutely we say forbidden, but we advise people that you should absolutely not be using anesthesia. The reason is because if you're dealing with patients that have an unhealthy scalp, they have poor circulation, and the last thing you want to do, and I've seen this online multiple times on YouTube, grab a big microneedle roller or an aggressive laser treatment and put a bunch of holes in your scalp and into your dermis. That is not good for your scalp at all, because you don't want to create a huge injury. A huge injury means that you now have to heal that area, and if you don't have a good healing capacity because you've got poor circulation, because your scalp is not very healthy, that's the last thing you want to do. So we use pain as a measure for making sure that people don't overdo it, because people have the tendency to think, oh, the more the better, the more painful, the more aggressive, the more density, the better my hair is going to be. That's just false. It's not going to be the case, and it could actually be a negative. So we definitely say no anesthetic. We definitely say no pain during the treatment, because pain is another measure of if the laser is going too deep. So we're using only 3 to 5 millijoules maximum with the laser. And again, we're trying to restrict the damage to the epidermis only, because that's the exact perfect delivery point for the nanoliposomes included in the KeraFactor MD.
And so I guess I interrupted you, but the outcome they can expect, I guess, that they're looking at a number of treatments, on average, how many number of treatments? And you said it takes 3 months to see the final result,
Yeah.
but as treatments, how were the treatments spaced?
Yeah, so there's people who do a bunch of different ways of doing it. We originally started with a two week in between treatments. We extended that once we finished a study that we did in Korea, that we showed that there was equivalence between doing it at 1 week intervals, 2 week intervals, and 4 week intervals. So we have changed it. We changed the protocol almost immediately. That's a few years ago now. So we're doing it with a 4 to 6 week break in between a single treatment. So one treatment, wait 4 to 6 weeks, then do another treatment. And you want to do at least 3 to 6 of those. That means each treatment is effective. Each treatment's going to produce results, but you're not going to start to appreciate the results until probably the second and third treatment. Again, another reason why you would want to space it further apart, because that means that you're treating, you're dosing, and you're waiting 4 to 6 weeks. By the time you've waited that 4 to 6 weeks, that's 4 to 6 weeks worth of hair growth. You treat again, another 4 to 6 weeks. So you're allowing time to appreciate that result. And again, for people that are doing it earlier than that, I mean, you're saving people money, and you're spacing those treatments throughout the year. So you're not only are you kind of maximizing the time between the treatments is maximizing the amount of results that they see at each treatment, but it also means less treatments during the year.
And James, I've seen some of your results already online, and I'm being fortunate I've been able to lecture about this treatment already. So I've seen some of the brilliant before and after photographs. So people can expect results. I guess the next question is, how is it different from other products on the marketplace?
That's a huge question because there are
A big
so
question.
many products on the market. But let's break it down. Let's go with something that's relatively popular, like PRP. And the reason I use PRP is one,
Yeah.
I don't need to call out a brand name or anything because PRP is kind of a
Yes,
generic.
PRP is the
Yeah,
one
but it's
popular
it's
one.
something that a
Yeah.
lot of people do. It's a lot of people inject it. A lot of people apply it topically. For the people who apply it topically, I feel sorry for you because none of that product gets into the scalp. So if you are doing PRP, you got to inject the stuff. Otherwise, you're just wasting all of those goodies that you get if you get goodies. Um, they're similar in nature in the fact that we use growth factors, I would say. There's no selectivity when you have PRP. You just get whatever the patient's got. Not to just say, hey, if you're doing PRP, you should stop. If you do PRP and you feel like that's helpful for you and it's being injected correctly, that's a great solution. KeraFactor and KeraLase would be a adjunctive solution. So this may be something that you may do like one PRP treatment and then you do a bunch of a series of KeraLase. But it's similar in the fact that it's leveraging increasing the amount of localized growth factors in the scalp. As far as other treatments are concerned, obviously there's traditional medication like minoxidil. There's medications that are anti-DHT. None of those are competitive to the KeraLase procedure. If people are happy using those products, they can use it in conjunction with KeraLase and KeraFactor. And then the third category is the lotions and potions and the plant extracts and the stuff that makes your hair feel better rather than actually make it grow better. That's the distinction, right? So those are, you know, oils or products that, again, are very much like those topical skin creams that, you know, make your skin softer. There's a bunch of products that make your hair feel thicker, feel softer, feel denser rather than actually being dense. And those again are things that if you're happy with using those products and they're not very expensive, I definitely don't suggest you spend a lot of money on those products if you are going in that direction. But from a purely scientific, medical, highly concentrated, bioidentical or biomimetic, and we can go into that if you like, biomimetic growth factors, there's really kind of only the PRP option, which is autologous, right? You're pulling your own
Yeah.
growth factors. And then there's the synthetic version in the highest concentration, which is the KeraFactor itself.
And then James, immediately after the procedure, 'cause I had a friend who recently had a more invasive procedure where you end up with crust in the scalp and then you
Mhm.
can't wash your hair for a while and it took a while to recovery. What are people experiencing immediately after treatment's finished? What's the sort of things that they have to, how does it look and what is the recovery time after that?
Pretty much nothing. As I said, it's a very low intensity treatment. So anybody who's had an ultra treatment or a laser MD treatment knows that even an aggressive, laser MD treatment on your face, you look a little sunburnt, a little bit,
Yeah.
brown dots or whatever like that, and then they kind of peel. you don't see anything like that at 3 to 5 millijoules on the scalp. So the
Yeah,
downtime is really just the day of the treatment, and maybe a little bit of scalp sensitivity, like that sunburny type feeling, but
yeah.
that's about it. Other than
Well,
that, there's zero.
well, James, before coming on the camera today, I did just a 3 millijoule superficial all over, and you can see like the redness is already
Yeah,
gone. Like, but that was a facial
right,
treatment.
exactly.
I was trying to look better for the camera.
That's
But
that's the I mean that's a good for people who are going to do this treatment, so we can give a little bit of information to those people too. It really shouldn't be red or irritated or anything like that. If it is red, irritated, inflamed, or anything like that, you're doing something wrong. It's epidermal delivery of the when you do not break the DE junction. That's the intersection between your epidermis and your dermis. There really shouldn't be much inflammation. There will be a little bit of pinkness, and as you mentioned, it goes almost immediately. And it's very important for people to know that the formula and our whole mechanism of action is derived around delivering product into the epidermis, not into the dermis. The epidermis wraps around every single hair follicle, and it's the most selective a topical formula can be when it comes to hair.
brilliant. I guess another one in is perhaps we can dive into sort of what do the ingredients do?
Yeah.
How's the product working and what ingredients? What are the ingredients doing?
Well, when I started in 2012 researching this, and I started looking at different growth factors that could be synthetically made that were bioidentical. I started off with about 15. I pared that down to about 10. And then eventually, by the time we launched the first generation product, this is a second generation product, MD. By the time we launched the first generation product at the end of 2016, early 2017, we had got it down to 7 highly concentrated biomimetic or biomimicking, bioidentical, they're interchangeable terms, growth factors. Each one's selective. So a growth factor that's like your vasoendothelial growth factor, VEGF, that would be one of them. I can go into all of them, but we'll be here probably for a while.
Yeah, it's a big
But just
one.
know that there's the base 7 is what we had in 2017. We now, in the KeraFactor MD formula, we have 8. One of the very special ones that we have in the MD formula that took over 7 years to actually synthesize in our lab and in the manufacturing is follistatin, which is the 8th of the 7, or the 8th one in the formula for the MD. And that's a very important growth factor for the anagen phase or the growth phase of the hair follicle. So each growth factor that we picked is manufactured independently. More importantly, it has each one has their own specific mechanism of action. And then even more than that, each growth factor is wrapped, think of it like a big bubble in a nanoliposome. So they don't interact with each other. They all sit in the same suspension or the same solution. Each one of the 8 are there in their own little bubble. And that maximizes the absorption of each of the different growth factors. As I said, each one has their specific mechanism of action. And then, of course, when you add all of them together, there's kind of a 1 + 1 = 3 effect, where there's a synergistic effect of combining, these different growth factors together. And so the simple thing is to know that if you pick up KeraFactor MD and you look on the label, you'll see SH polypeptide or SH oligopeptide. Those
I have one.
polypeptides,
Yeah,
those are the growth factors.
have one here, James, but my eyesight's not that good to read it at the moment. But yeah,
Yeah,
okay. I guess another question that came in. Someone says, are all growth factors peptides?
Well, if growth factors are being used for topical delivery, then they should be INCI classified or cosmetically classified as polypeptides. So polypeptide is just a fancy way of saying a branched chain amino acid, right? So like a protein or a growth factor is just a series of amino acids in a lattice-based structure. And when you look at them under a microscope or under what we call chromatography, they have a certain lattice structure to them, and we identify them, or our body identifies them as, oh, that's insulin growth factor, or that's epidermal growth factor, or that's vasoendothelial growth factor. And so the polypeptides can be anything. But if you pick up your box and you look here
Yeah.
on the label, and you even Google the SH polypeptide dash whatever, you will find that that specific name is directly linked to a specific type of growth factor that is expressed naturally in your body, and we're basically delivering that same natural but in a synthetic version to the scalp.
James, someone must be messaging because in my building the lights just went out, but luckily we're still okay. I guess last question for you is, what are the differences between KeraFactor and exosomes? Because exosomes is a big trending
Yeah,
topic
my
at the moment.
favorite question. Thank you for that. Exosomes is a very, I'll tell you something about exosomes. Exosomes, for people who are old enough like me, exosomes is like the stem cell craze of like 15 years ago. And everything was stem cells, stem cells, stem cells, and now everything's exosomes, exosomes, exosomes. Let's start by breaking down what exosomes are and what they are not. Exosomes are signaling on and off extracellular, so they're outside of the cell. So they are there and they're responsible for turning things on and off. And guess what? They exist everywhere, everywhere and everything. And actually, some smart person in the last 10 years said, well, hang on, we grab these, like, let's say PRP, or let's say we grab stem cells, or we grab stem cells from the fat, or we grab it from, umbilical or whatever. And what the theory was in the beginning was, hang on, we're grabbing these cells, but when we grab these cells, we're also grabbing the fluid that's around these cells, and this fluid
Yeah.
is packed full of these things called exosomes. And so we say we're doing these stem cell therapies, or we're doing these therapies with your tissue, and we're growing these things up. How do we know that it's the growth factors, or it's the stem cells, or it's the exosomes that are doing the work? And so what's happened over the last few years is people have very much drilled down on the exosomes, and considering they're outside of the cell, there's relatively, it's still very difficult, but it's relatively, compared to actual DNA material, it's relatively easy to develop those. And so right now we're in a situation where we have these things called exosomes, and we have plant-derived exosomes, we have human-derived exosomes from different areas of the body that are magnified. So we're in this exact same situation that we were in the stem cell days. And so what I would tell people about exosomes is, first, wait, because we don't know exactly what they do. We don't even know how to identify them. There's thousands of different types. But at the end of the day, it's something very funny that happens. So let's say exosomes work, and exosomes are attracted to areas of inflammation, and certain exosomes will do certain things, turn on this, make your body make some more growth factors and things like that. So at the end of the day, there are a bunch of signaling guys that go in and tell your body to do something. We don't even know exactly what they do, but they're very good for wound healing. For hair, the jury is out, and it'll be out for probably another 10 years. But what I would say is that if exosomes are working well, guess what they're doing? They're going to tell your body to produce growth factors. And the growth factors at the end of the day are, why don't we just go straight to what the body needs, which is the body, in order to do the cell replication that we want to increase the amount of keratin, we need the growth factors. So why don't we just use the growth factors directly? We can make them synthetically, we can make them in high concentrations, we can make them at a much lower cost, and we know precisely what each growth factor does. It can't run off to other areas of the body and do other things. We know exactly what it does. And until exosomes get to the point that we're able to synthesize specific types that do specific things, I still think that exosomes is going to be more of a buzzword, or something that's good for general healing of the skin versus something very specific interaction method.
So James, thank you. We've run out of time, so thank you very much today. Your knowledge you have the most amazing knowledge, obviously on this subject, but also on the whole laser industry as well. So it's great to have you on board. From, I know, a UK's perspective, you are sending us you're sending us a lot of samples so we can start our own trials. I know you've got great clinical data. We can have our own trial centres set up here in the UK. We've got a launch later on this year, which I'm hoping you will be great if you can come over for. So we'll hopefully catch up soon. People can message us on the Lutronic site to be able to find out more about KeraFactor and where the initial installations are taking place. And we would urge all Ultra clients at the moment to reach out to us and put your pre-order in for KeraFactor. So thank you very much for today.
No, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Say hi to Lauren. See you later on.